The girl in the center of the FNAF Security Breach Ruins poster is most likely our player character for the DLC, considering how Gregory seems to be stuck since, the words "help me" are written on a monitor showing his face. But who is this mysterious main character? It's a question that not many have an answer to, but I think I might have another one. So that's what we're exploring in today's video. Let's do it. Last time I came to the conclusion that this mysterious girl is one of this round's missing children that got possessed by Elizabeth, and while I do still firmly believe that, this got me thinking, who else could it possibly be? We asked you loyal subscribers on a community post, and the overwhelming conclusion was that the majority of you are wrong. Okay, just kidding. A lot of you though seem to think that this could be Vanessa as a ghost. And despite the fact that Vanny's eyes are on the poster, I think that you might actually be onto something. So let's talk about it. Although I just need to put this out there, the identity of this little girl is 100% not Susie, the girl who possesses Chica, okay? Susie has been dead for a very long time when this game takes place, being dead over 50 years or so, and while that doesn't really matter in the context of FNAF, there's still no way it could be. You may be thinking that she could be possessed by Susie, but we released Susie's spirit in the Happiest Day minigame. Some assume that this takes place at the end of the timeline, however I don't think that's true, considering how FNAF 3 was supposed to be the end, and that's when FNAF 3 is over and we get the good ending. So to me, that indicates that the Happiest Day minigame takes place around the time of FNAF 3, especially considering how the simulated pizzeria from FNAF 6 didn't have to lure the original animatronics back to the pizzeria, meaning that they did not need to be released, because they had already been dealt with. So in regards to this theory, the first thing I need to disprove is that it's impossible, since Vanny's eyes are in the corner. But just because we see some faded eyes, it doesn't mean that a spirit cannot be separate from a body. I mean, look at Afton, for example. This man was code that possessed a human while his body was stuck in an underground pizzeria. So there is a precedent for their body being around without their soul. The issue in my mind comes around when we see that since Vanny's eyes are glowing, her body is operational, which kinda shoots this theory between the eyes until you remember that there are multiple things possessing Vanny's body. One version of Glitchtrap's code and then Vanessa herself. So we can go one of two ways with this now. The fact that Vanny's body may solely be Glitchtrap now, or the fact that Glitchtrap is still operating in Vanessa, but Burntrap is also Afton. He's back as Afton, okay? Either way, there are two versions of Afton in operation right now. One of them is coded and the other is possibly not, but we can't really be sure. And William isn't the only person to have a coded version. I mean, remember Princess Quest? The game designed to keep Vanessa at bay while William wreaks havoc as Vanny? I mean, the Princess Quest ending, otherwise known as the best ending, is the only ending to have 3 stars. It had some significance, but what? It's a question we've been asking ever since Security Breach ended. Another one is what happened to the Princess Quest game machines located around the Pizzaplex. It seems reasonable that at the very least the one in Roxy's salon was destroyed, and if the Pizzaplex is in ruins, then the others must have been destroyed too, right? Well, if that is the case, what happens to Vanessa's spirit? Like, is it released, or does it fade away into nothing? It's not fading away, not with unfinished business still afoot. The spirit of Vanessa had to go somewhere, but where could it go? Well, this could be some random girl that Vanessa just grabbed off the street or that was walking by, or it could still be one of the missing children that was trapped in the building. Either way, whoever they are, it's really of little consequence if this is really Vanessa possessing them. Okay, the only thing that matters in this context is that Vanessa's possessing them, not who the kid is, I'm guessing. The precedent is set in this universe where one person can possess multiple things if one version that is possessing something is coded and the other is a spirit. So this is definitely possible. The character on the poster is also actually completely grayscale, aside from the rim lighting thanks to her flashlight and the color of her lights on the shoes that she's wearing. These are also colored purple and red, colors that in this game specifically are linked to William because it's purple. I mean, I can't even wear a shirt on this channel now without being called the purple guy. So yeah, purple equals Afton, Burntrap, William, whatever. And then Vanny with her giant glowing red eyes are also on this poster, okay? It's like they wanted us to make this connection. But if they wanted us to make the connection, does that mean that this is all intentional, or is it mostly just a red herring or MacGuffin to keep us away from the real story? That's for you to debate in the comments. Either way, I think that the possibility of this girl being possessed by Vanessa is absolutely possible, especially since she could be just a manifestation of the player character from Princess Quest, just kind of modernized because, you know, it's FNAF, we can't really argue with that kind of thing. Which I'm sure would make a lot of people mad if that is the case, because everyone thinks that the girl from Princess Quest is Cassidy or Golden Freddy, but that's not canon because that name was scrapped from the files, okay? Someone at Steelwell may just have not known the significance of that name and like named the character after their daughter or something, or after a sister or whatever, okay? So no way to be sure, but that name has been confirmed as not canon, so what do you think, okay? I mean, the majority of you did think that it was Vanessa in the community post, but what do you think after watching both of these videos? Okay, be sure you let me know down below, and if you haven't seen the other one, okay, the link will be at the end of this video for you, because that's just the kind of generous, beautiful, exotic, absolutely befuddling human being that I am. I'm also very humble. I'm still banking on the Elizabeth train, but it really depends for where they want to go with the series next. Like, they could go Invasion of the Body Snatchers and get Vanessa to claim her body back, or they could go with a family reunited. Now first, your instinct may be that this is impossible, okay? And honestly, that was my first instinct too. I mean, Susie's been dead since like 1985 with the missing children's incident, and she ends up possessing Chica, who is then set free and happy as a day. So like, how is it even remotely possible? Well, some say that the happiest day minigame that sets Susie free really takes place at the very end of the timeline, no matter when that ends up being, meaning that at the time of security breach, none of the original 5 animatronics have actually been released, which means that if we go off the fact that this girl is possessed, this is entirely possible. I mean, Susie is the first of the missing children, and definitely seemingly the most important one, given the fact that we see her as a kid in the Fruity Maze minigame's reflection. And I mean, even if the one you should not have killed is Cassidy, it's just a blown out version of her face. But the puppet is present for the Happiest Day minigame, and they get released in FNAF 6, right? There's one key detail, however, that really makes me unsure. Something that's been in the back of my brain for a while, but it may make a few people mad because it involves using the novels. In the original novel trilogy, starting with the Silver Eyes, the Funtime animatronics are injected with Remnant made from the original 5 possessed animatronics, meaning that if Remnant does indeed contain part of the soul instead of just being metal that once had a soul, the original 5, despite being set free in Happiest Day, no matter when it takes place, could still have the slightest bit of spirit form in the main world, I guess. Which could also explain why Molten Freddy had to show up along with Scrap Baby, also known as Elizabeth, in FNAF 6, unless we just assume that there was a slight bit of Elizabeth remaining inanimate after she left, or if we assume that Henry wanted to get rid of all traces of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, or all things that Afton created, which at that point also included his son. That's a lot of assumptions. So without assuming anything, but also while using the books to get some further context, which some people don't like, it is possible that after they burned in FNAF 6, much like Afton, Susie's spirit was set loose. Not free, like it didn't move on, but it was just loose in the atmosphere, willing to grab onto whatever it could. Or that it merged into the blob, and then the fire that Gregory causes that caused the cave-in ended up setting her soul loose again, and then she possessed a person. I don't think that there is really any explanation that could mean that this is Susie's original body. That seems fundamentally impossible. So whoever this is, if she is a character we've already met prior to this game, she would have to be possessed. Unless this is an entirely new character, which is absolutely possible. I mean, it doesn't have to be someone that's already established, obviously, but I mean, it's fun to speculate and theorize nonetheless. Another indication that I've seen a few people point out is that Chica does actually also appear on this poster, which is certainly an interesting choice. I mean, she was certainly the most popular enemy animatronic in this game, and the other animatronics are very out of commission even before the collapse. I mean, Roxy couldn't see and Monty was split in two. But since we can't really take anything in FNAF at first glance, is this actually meant to indicate the identity of our mystery girl? it's certainly a possibility. I mean, the only ones who really know are Steelwool, Scott, and whoever made the poster. But given Chica's state, I'm guessing that this is just meant to indicate a timeline, that this occurs after the collapse rather than at some other time prior to the game starting, and then maybe they rebuild the Pizzaplex, or maybe even long after it ends. Because I mean, like, look at her, okay? Chica has got to be probably one of the most resilient animatronics in the group, because she's still kicking despite being crushed by a trash compactor and then having a building land on top of her, and she still has most of her smoking hot bod. Some of it was removed, some of it was cracked, but her face also has seemingly melted, possibly due to the fire we were using to kill Burntrap, or maybe it's just because like a fire started in the kitchen when the building collapsed, and then she thought that it was just really hot pizza. I don't know. She's also lost the lower half of her left arm, her left, not your left. Remember that, I've made that mistake. And she's also lost her right leg warmer. The casing on her midriff and right arm is gone, but other than that, she is still fairly intact. Her endoskeleton is, at the very least, especially compared to Monty. Also, interestingly enough, only Chica's white face melted, meaning that it looks like someone spilt frosting all over her face. Yeah, I guess that takes the term busted to a whole new level. But other than that, there aren't really any connections between her and Susie. Probably the most resilient animatronic in the group because, again, she's still kicking. Susie was possessing the yellow Chica, so I feel like this Chica being white is meant to show us that this is not going to be like the same sort of situation. So I don't think that relating this Chica to that Chica or this Chica to Susie is really logical in this case. I think it's a bad idea, okay? No, I guarantee you that this is not going to be Susie, and if it is, I'm going to quit FNAF. Look, yes, she's blonde, and yes, Susie was blonde, but she was also blonde in 1985, okay? It's been like 50 years since the missing children's incident in the games, and the original Chica animatronic was destroyed, and Susie's spirit was released, okay? Happiest Day does not take place at the end of the timeline. The pigtails on this girl are very reminiscent of Baby, but this girl has blonde hair, and while we may not be able to see her face, I feel like it is possible that she does have green eyes, okay? Because anyone with blonde hair instantly makes me think of Elizabeth Afton, not Susie. Since Elizabeth has more impact to the story than Susie, and even in the books, Baby ends up having more of an impact thanks to the Afton amalgam. And considering the blob that got introduced in this game is very much similar to that amalgam, this still makes the most sense to me, okay? But I figured that I'd go through the possibilities in separate videos just for good measure, okay? I'm not sure.
Number 10, will return. This theory is based on some pretty strong facts if you ask me. After all, Burntrap is William Afton, who at this point has come back multiple times from the brink of death and beyond. While Burntrap was defeated at the end of the Afton ending, having been seemingly attacked and defeated by the Blob, this does not mean that he is in fact dead. We know William Afton well enough at this point to theorize that he likely won't stay dead and may even return. I mean, he's done it before, and this time around we almost believed that he wouldn't, and we fell for that and we were wrong. That Vanny would actually just carry on his name and he'd be completely gone. But considering that Vanny seems to have been a one and done villain kinda, unless she too is somehow a villain who can be like redeemed or killed and then return from that, I am seriously doubtful we'll ever get anyone to replace William long term. So I kind of expect to see him in the DLC. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming and you love it when we talk FNAF, check out our FNAF playlist. We have lots of FNAF content for you.
Unit 9 Secret Robot. The possibility that Gregory is a robot is still a thing at the time of recording. So let's talk about the random bits that make Gregory seem more like an animatronic than a human. There's the fact that he's literally smaller than a 4-year-old, however is able to speak full sentences and do literally everything he does in this game, which seems like he's a rogue robot that's been active for a long time. He also gets all CRT glitchy red whenever Vanny's around, which is a similar effect to where you would put a magnet to an older TV. There's Freddy's shock as to how he sees Gregory after getting Roxy's eyes, and there's also the fact that literally nothing else makes sense about him unless he is a robot. It explains why he'd be homeless, it explains why he's so willing to kill because he would have no moral code, it would explain why Vanny would be willing to bring him to Afton if he's supposed to be Crying Child as a robot, and it explains why Afton takes over Freddy and not Gregory if he is meant to be Crying Child. Basically, it makes this whole game make sense. So, is he a robot? Currently unknown, but it's certainly possible, and I feel like it's probably a thing.
Number 8, not Scrap Trap. This theory comes from the fact that Burntrap actually has his arm replaced in the game. Interesting. Now, last we saw William Afton would be Pizzeria Simulator, where he was believed to have been Scrap Trap, or at least the last time we saw him physically in person. Scrap Trap seemed like an even more worn version of Springtrap, and can basically be found in the game out in the alley. It's one of the animatronics you can salvage in this game. However, Scrap Trap was pretty much completely missing an arm, whereas Burntrap, of course, has both arms. And if Scrap Trap is supposed to have been Burntrap, I mean, how is Burntrap even alive, or unalive, or whatever he is? I mean, Scrap Trap got burned up pretty bad, and all the animatronics were implied to have died there. So how would this body still be functional at all? And I know what you're thinking, you know, Glitch Trap was technically the last time we saw William Afton in the games with Help Wanted, but even that doesn't make Burntrap's existence make any more sense, because it doesn't explain the state of Burntrap's body or why we're continuing to see it used. If this was the original Springtrap, Scrap Trap form, obviously, which, I mean, it might not be because there might have been some weird stuff there. Speaking of weird stuff, Number 7, what about the rest of the map? Security Breach was supposed to be massive, and honestly it was, but for all the digital space that it took up both on the maps in-game and on people's consoles and computers for those playing a downloaded copy, it felt like there was a lot that simply appeared but was not used. And that's not even getting into all the completely unused maps that you could find and explore via the game files, the ones that were actually hidden from view or exploration normally. There are also a bunch of places glimpsed in the game that are really underutilized in terms of where the story takes you as Gregory, and you know, even if those spots are used at all in the story. I'm hoping we'll get to see some of these maps return in the DLC and even get their chance to be used in the actual gameplay and story. That would be pretty neat. I definitely think the DLC has the potential to completely change the Pizzaplex, which could open up new areas or just give us an opportunity to venture into areas that were ultimately relegated to serving simply aesthetic purposes in Security Breach. So I actually get to go to those places and, I don't know, maybe do something there that's important. Number 6, needs organic body. Assuming that Burntrap's body is the same one as possibly Scrap Trap and definitely Springtrap, and before that originally the Spring Bonnie suit, or perhaps I guess I should say originally in part William Afton, it could stand to reason that the why behind Afton returning to this old and tarnished form is because he actually needs his physical, organic, human body for something. Perhaps he needs to remain connected to it to even be able to move into the physical plane from the digital world. Or perhaps he is intending to resurrect his human form. But an explanation given in regards to why he physically appears the way he does in Security Breach could simply be that this is the form he needs to take for one reason or another. Now the reasoning of course behind the need is a little more unclear for me, but I'd believe it if it was revealed that William had some kind of plans for his human corpse. It just sounds like a William thing.
Halfway through into number 5, Vanessa relationship. His relationship with Vanessa also seemingly makes no sense. Okay, we're willing to kill her in one ending, she does something to us in another ending, but if we free her from William's control, she ends up taking us out for ice cream, and then we sit on a hill with Glam Rock Freddy's head. No big deal. Like, what the hell? This lady just spent 6 hours trying to kill you in your mind, bro. Okay, so like, you think that that would make it a little more difficult to just chill with her, okay? Even if she did did offer you ice cream, which you know what is even worse. Would you get into her unmarked van if she offered you ice cream too? I doubt it. So why would you think that this is a good idea? I don't know. It seems like they're related or that they know each other somehow, but no connection prior to this is ever established. So what the frickin' hell? Like, Gregory isn't mentioned in Vanessa's therapy sessions and vice versa if he is Client 46. Like, Vanessa isn't mentioned to Gregory, if those are about Gregory, but like, even if they are, who made him associated with the company? Okay, it could have been Vanessa, but wouldn't we have mentioned it or mentioned her odd behavior? I don't know, okay? This dude has so much going wrong with him that it is triggering all of the red flag sensors within me, and those have gotten good. I have dated some crazies.
Number 4, Vanny's repairs. When it comes to that one missing arm and where it came from, there are a lot of fans that have simply explained this by pointing to Vanny. Vanny in Security Breach appears to have been working for William Afton via glitch trap, and in so doing also managed to recover his original body and fix it up. The weirdest thing about that theory is if Vanny was taking parts from the Pizzaplex to fix up Burn Trap, why wouldn't she do more for him? I mean, replacing his arm, that's pretty nice, but what about the rest of him? What about his jaw? What about everything? Burn Trap is in a pretty dismal state when it comes to his appearance, and so you'd think she'd do more than just that if she was making repairs. So that's where this theory kind of falls apart for me, but I will say I think it's one of the most logical ones we have in regards to Burn Trap's appearance in Security Breach.
Getting close to the end of number 3, 2 Vannies. The rooftop ending is unlocked by exiting the Pizzaplex through the prize counter and then clicking leave, which will then prompt Freddy to burn the place to the ground and for the two of you to escape onto the roof, which is a horrible idea. They both die, and then we take off Vanny's mask, revealing Vanessa, but of course, for some reason, we're shown another couple of panels with Vanessa standing on the rooftop looking down at what just happened. This is probably one of the most confusing endings in the entire game, since it shows us that there are apparently 2 Vanessas, and while we seemingly knew about the whole double life thing, we didn't really expect the 2 characters to show up in the same room. And then in the Princess Quest ending, we save Vanny, and she drops her masks, and there's only 1 Vanessa. Okay, how are there 2 Vanessas? Like, it could be Vanessa's soul looking down at her body, okay, because like we know that souls are a thing in this universe, and then they're supposed to be able to be released with fire.
Number 2, Amalgamated. On the other hand, it is possible that Burn Trap will appear in the DLC as kind of a new part of the Blob, a new addition, if you will. It would be interesting to see how this might change or affect the Blob's personality. The Blob could then become more antagonistic in the DLC as a result, or perhaps William could be, I don't know, redeemed in some way by becoming a part of it. Maybe he'd finally get a sense for his victims' suffering and he'd actually like feel something about that. If his victims are the Blob, like I think they might be. Though how that makes sense after Pizzeria Simulator, I don't really know. Or perhaps the Blob would just devour Burn Trap's soul if amalgamated, and William Afton would effectively be erased from existence. Finally, actually defeated. I doubt it, but you know, we can't completely rule it out. And I can still dream. Number 1, what about the cult of Afton? This for me is a big one, and it might not be as big of a one for you, but for me, as the person writing this, is what I want to talk about. So we know that William Afton once again returned as Burn Trap in Security Breach. Last we saw, Burn Trap got dragged down into a pit in a fight with the Blob animatronic, or animatronics. Combined animatronics. Vanny also gets her own ending in the game, either being redeemed, killed, or possibly left alone. If you decide to vacate the Pizzaplex early to see where that ending takes you instead of sticking around to help out and solve the mystery of what's been happening at the Pizzaplex. However, what we don't know by the end of this game at all is if Vanny was the only follower of Afton at this point, or if there might be, I don't know, more out there. Perhaps even other employees of the Pizzaplex. What I want to know is, what is the state of the cult of Afton at this point? How does that impact whatever is happening in Rune? Or is there simply no cult to speak of? Are we dropping this plot point entirely? And yes, I know this was more of a theory, but I also feel like if we want to make Vanny make sense, then we kind of need to have this in there somewhere. The cult of Afton kind of has to continue.
In a 10 killed Vanny. Vanny isn't actually a killer, or at least there's no evidence that Vanny wanted to kill Gregory. Vanny never threatens us, she's never holding a knife or another weapon, and for all intents and purposes, she's definitely creepy and wants to kidnap us at least, but she isn't trying to kill us, at least in the eyes of the law. And everyone is saying that Gregory having her killed is fine because his life was in danger, but in the eyes of the justice system, his life wasn't exactly in jeopardy in that sense. Self-defense also only counts if you use the proper amount of force, meaning not an excessive amount, because, you know, making someone suffer and then die isn't self-defense, that's just torture. And giving the robots the command to tear Vanny apart like they tore Freddy up, because it's the same command, so the same thing would happen, is definitely classified as excessive, alright? Just imagine what happened to Freddy on a human. That's what happened to Vanny. So yeah, Gregory is definitely a cold-hearted killer in this scenario. And 9 survived. Not only was she playing with her food the entire game, only appearing a couple of times despite being heavily featured in the promotion, she also didn't end up dying at the end of the game like we all thought. Or well, at least she hasn't been officially confirmed as dead yet. With her not being present in the cave during the canon and true ending, we have no idea where she was or how much of the Pizzaplex was really affected. I mean, like, she could have been in the section that collapsed, which is presumably Roxy's Raceway and maybe even a bit more according to the Ruin poster, but I mean, assuming the fact that it's called Ruin, I feel like it's probably the whole thing, and she's actually not dead because we see her eyes on that poster. Like, even if the entire Pizzaplex collapsed, she could be dead, but she's probably not. But since we don't know what really happened to her while we're just like on a hill chilling with Freddy, and it's left like that on purpose, because not only is it like a FNAF game, but also they're doing this so they can go wherever the hell they want with the DLC. That's why we haven't gotten anything aside from that poster. They gave us the poster to shut us up, and then that's it. And like, Afton could have been killed by the blob, or he could have been saved by it. It's anyone's guess, which means that Vanny's ending is the most obscure, but also that means that she could come back and be the villain. And it ain't Help Me. Very reminiscent of the Save Them minigame from earlier FNAF games. I'm pretty sure it's FNAF 2. In the poster for FNAF Ruin, you can see Gregory's face on the bottom left monitor, but the phrase "Help Me" underscore written in green lettering. This seems to me, at least, to indicate that we may have a potential plot brewing where we need to save Gregory and maybe Freddy as well from the collapse of the Pizzaplex, since we know that Gregory and Freddy are sitting on the hill in the final shot alone in the true ending, which means that if we do end up having to save him, our player character will most likely perish in the process. But this also means that we will not be playing as Gregory in this game, but that's just more of an indication as to why he could be the villain. The underscore in that text could also be another indication of Gregory being a robot, but it could also just be potentially a reference to a file within the DLC that could have some more secret information. But I have no idea if that is true. It's just speculation since we don't have any of the files for the DLC, because, you know, underscores are primarily used for putting spaces in file names without actually using spaces. Or it could be that we're, like I said, we're just trying to help him. But it could also be a ruse that's meant to lure us to a place where we will ultimately perish.
Number 7, the meta. Going off of that theory, another theory that some have is that Scraptrap was never even really real. Yeah, this is kind of more of a Scraptrap theory, I guess, but as it was sort of in part created because of the existence of Burntrap, I feel like we can include it on our list. Some believe that Pizzeria Simulator isn't even part of the canon in the same way as the other games, and that it is more like Help Wanted, kind of a sort of metagame that is supposed to exist within the universe of FNAF itself.
And it's 6, no snitches. Okay, I don't know how Gregory survived security breach if he is not secretly evil. There were plenty of times that this kid could have gotten got, but no. Particularly when Freddy gets grabbed by the Moondrop animatronic right outside of Parts and Service. Alright, are you telling me that the daycare attendant, Moondrop, whatever you want to call him, told Vanessa that Freddy was in the Parts and Service room like, hey, I got ya boy downstairs, but didn't mention that we were in the recharge station right next to it? I mean, like, he knew we were there. He waved at us while he was dragging Freddy's corpse. Like, then she's talking to Freddy as if she doesn't know we're listening in, and as if she thinks that we're working with him, but isn't quite sure. Like, come on, okay? Like, yeah, the daycare attendant can't get us if we're in the recharge station, but we're clearly visible, okay? We aren't invisible, he can see us, so why wouldn't he also inform Vanessa that we are working with Freddy and just confirm it? If he did, like, she would have brought that up instead of asking him if he was helping us. It doesn't make sense. The daycare not ratting on us is extremely suspicious in my opinion, and just seems like they needed to get him downstairs to burn trap or something, alright? I don't know, it's creepy.
Number 5, how do we fit? How do we fit? Since the beginning of this game, I've been yearning to see the intricacies in regards to how this makes any bit of sense. At the very beginning of the game and throughout, you as Gregory are hiding within Glamrock Freddy's chest cavity, which Freddy states is only to be used for things like delivering birthday cakes. You play as a small kid in this game, okay? Gregory is not like a giant child, but definitely not a kid that is the size of any party cake I've ever seen. But he's also definitely not a kid that is the size of any party cake that I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever met any human with the capacity to both walk and talk independently and thought they were the size of a cake. Never experienced that. Unless it was of course a very lavish, monstrous cake perhaps, like a giant cake. Which is clearly not what Freddy is talking about here, I assume. I assume not all the cakes are giant that they have at the Pizzaplex, but maybe I'm wrong there. All I want is to actually see someone climb inside an animatronic and then see how they fit from a third-person perspective. Is this too much to ask? It might be, because, you know, according to just space, that might not make any sense. Do I still want to see it anyways? You bet I do.
And for Gregory oddities. Now, building off of that, Gregory's height compared to his age has always been something that's bothered me. So to really calculate how tall Gregory is, I did the good old pixel measurement system off the Funko statue of Gregory and Freddy. Now, assuming that Glamrock Freddy's height is the same as Rockstar Freddy, which ends up being around 6.1 feet, that means that Freddy's 570 pixels in this instance, for the picture I was using, ends up being 6.1 feet, okay? That opening that Gregory is hiding in, when being generous at least, at my counting was 118 pixels tall. 118 pixels, which, keep in mind was being generous, ends up equaling out to 14.21 inches or 1.18 feet. Going on various forums about children's car seats of all things, the government is definitely watching me now, I see that the torso length of kids, while greatly varying, does end up being larger than 14.21 inches on average. Even a 4-year-old ends up having a torso of 15 inches. And the knowledge that this kid has exceeds even some of my own. The kid is the size of a 4-year-old maybe, but can fit inside baby strollers and various other small areas around the Pizzaplex. He's too small to drive one of the go-karts alone, but knows how to restart generators, operate a trash compactor, start and drive a car, and has the ability to identify a car battery, connect jumper cables to that battery properly, and then use those to fix Freddy's whole recharge every hour issue in one of the endings. How the living hell does that make any sense? It doesn't. Bro.
Number 3, where is the Stitch Wraith? A character I was really hoping we'd see in Security Breach, something that I was theorizing about before that game came out, is now the one that I'm hoping we see in Rune. Stitch Wraith seems to exist exclusively in the books, and while the tale of the Stitch Wraith has seemingly come to an end in the 11th Fazbear Frights book, Prankster, this is a character that I would still love to see somehow incorporated into the games and given some kind of new meaning. Visually speaking, and in terms of characterization, the Stitch Wraith is just a fascinating character to me. Is it possible we could see the character finally enter the world of the games in Rune? I hope so.
But ultimately, in number 2, vandalism. Not only does Gregory damage multiple vents and vent covers throughout the game, but the main objective of the game is also a crime. That's right, you heard me. Us upgrading Freddy and using the parts of the other animatronics that we acquire through destructive means is vandalism, or it would be considered destruction of property instead if you wanted to head in that direction. But either way, destroying these animatronics despite them trying to get to us is a crime. Okay? Technically, we don't know what happens when we get caught by an animatronic. Same thing with Vanny, alright? Like, our screen cuts out before we see any real damage or harm come to us. So assuming that we get killed, while the likely scenario is merely an assumption. Plus, they're animatronics, so we can't really claim self-defense. Well, I mean, I guess it would depend on the jury and the judge as to whether you could claim self-defense or not, but like yeah, you feared for your life, but does that really call for hitting Roxy with a go-kart or crushing Chica in a trash compactor and it's like smashing Monty with a giant bucket? You could have just hid inside of Freddy's green room the whole time. You chose to go out and destroy these animatronics, so you put yourself in harm's way, which kind of negates the whole self-defense idea too, okay? They could also use the fact that Freddy was good as reasoning as to why the rest wouldn't have hurt you, so yeah.
Number 1, not appearing. A scary thought for sure, in the sense that I feel like a game without some kind of Afton presence feels weird. Even when Afton hasn't been directly appearing in a game, his presence is usually felt there in some way, usually as a result of his actions, which have created other antagonists for us to face. The idea of Burntrap not appearing at all, it's a pretty scary thought for that reason. However, this could also just be a DLC where Burntrap himself does not appear, but where, of course, Afton's presence is still somehow felt. I'd be more interested in that actually than him just straight up making another antagonistic appearance again. What else is there for us to explore and find in these ruins? Could some of Burntrap's other victims or experiments be lying in wait for us to face?
It's and taunting. Now, being a killer is one thing, assuming that is what she does when she catches us, but when you're so sadistic that you end up taunting the various characters or people, that's when it ends up getting worse. And Vanny certainly does this. Whether it's her on the sound system, or her popping up on a TV, or even her joyfully skipping towards us until she's close enough to dash, she's playing with us like we are a pet on a farm before she ultimately puts us down so the family can have dinner. Like, come on, okay? There is no way that she's just like that, especially with Afton being the one who's controlling her, essentially just like making her another version of him. Okay, so like, yeah, it's her taunting us. She's playing with her food, and that's some of the freakiest crap in this game. Okay, like imagine if like Ted Bundy or John Wayne Gacy was coming after you and they were just like skipping down the street in the middle of the night being lit by lampposts. That's basically what this is. God, like, and actually based on Supernatural's depiction, this is exactly how Gacy would have acted. But either way, it's creepy as hell.
Number 9, can Glamrock Freddy bust a move? Something that it felt like we were robbed of in the game was getting to see Freddy bust a move, show off his sweet dance moves. While there are a few times that we head to dance floors in the game, we never really get to see Freddy join us to dance. Also, we don't spend a lot of time dancing either as Gregory. Mostly spend a lot of time killing other animatronics. Actually, oddly enough, this game is rather devoid of dancing or performances for a game that is centered around a location that is built on the idea of, you know, entertaining animatronics that often, you know, dance. I'm still hoping that the Room DLC might give us a chance to see more animatronics in performance mode. Ideally, Freddy, that would be pretty cool to see Glamrock Freddy dance. Maybe he somehow gets to return to the Pizzaplex years later and like cleared up of his bug. He finally gets to show off some sweet dance moves without having to worry about glitching out. Or, you know, maybe he's come back to save Gregory, because that kind of seems like what the poster is hinting at, that we're gonna have to save Gregory. But as a little girl, I don't know. Where's Freddy at?
And it ate human masks. It's unclear why she does these things or like what she does with these human masks, but through the FNAF AR emails we learned that Vanessa, while in her Vanny Persona 5, ended up purchasing 3 realistic human masks. No idea why, okay, it's never brought up again, but honestly, you gotta admit that's pretty terrifying no matter what she ends up using them for, okay? Like maybe they were for realistic humanoid robots, or maybe she wanted to prank people on Omegle or chat roulette where she pretends to be a dude or something, like Onage prank style. But I don't know, okay? The possibilities are fairly finite, actually. They're not endless, but they're also kind of endless as well, if you know what I'm saying. Like, there are so many things that she could be doing with those masks that it's impossible to guess. I mean, educated guessing and like matpat both leaning towards like maybe one of the masks being used on Gregory, but that begs the question, where did the other 2 go? Or were they even used? I don't know, okay? Vanessa and Gregory are the only 2 human characters in this game, so even if they're both robots, where's the 3rd mask go, okay? I don't know. Her buying them is scary enough, but not not knowing what she used them for is just as terrifying. Like, did she hang them on the wall or something? And at 7 caused this. And honestly, okay, I mean, Gregory is the reason the DLC is called Ruin anyway, right? If he'd have just minded his own damn business and didn't go down into the basement of an about to open to staff pizzaplex, he'd have been fine. But no, he decided in his infinite child wisdom that he's gonna do the stupid thing and take a one-way elevator ride, which caused the collapse of the pizzaplex. And sure, you can argue that him leaving the pizzaplex is the worst ending, but he doesn't know that in the context of the game, okay? Gregory, in the story of the canon ending, could have left, but decides to make stupid choices and gets into the sinkhole below the place, and then sets everything down there on fire and brings the building down on top of him. But somehow he survives despite needing help according to the poster, and then he makes it to a hill without the protagonist of the DLC. Seems sus to me. Alright, Gregory definitely vented to get out of there. Just saying. And at 6, Afton. In the best ending, there were quite a few confusing moments. The most confusing one, for me at least, is the idea that Gregory would go get an ice cream with Vanessa once she was done trying to kill him. Why would you do that? Like, some seem to think that it's because they're related, or representing the dead Afton kids. And thanks to matpat, there is a little more evidence to this, and it's because of the ice cream that Vanessa eats while on the hill. It's very reminiscent of the ice cream cone that lured Elizabeth into Baby's arm, or grabbing, scooping range, or whatever you want to say it. Cause like the cone with the tall, soft serve kinda looks like the cone with the tall, soft serve that Baby presented to Elizabeth in order to lure her in. I don't know, is that evidence or coincidence? No idea whatsoever.
Number 5, Ghost. Another theory is that Burntrap looks the way he does because he is not actually physical, but simply appears to be physical, and that he is in essence some kind of ghost. This theory seems a lot more flimsy to me because I do think Burntrap exists fully on the physical plane, but it would at least allow us to explain why and how this form could still possibly exist. If Burntrap was a ghost, you would think he'd appear as, whatever form he most identifies with, and he could even maybe alter his appearance himself. Perhaps it is his sins that make him take the form of Burntrap, and it was simply his soul that was transferred from the digital world to the physical world, and when he takes control of other animatronics, it is not really through as much as code as like a spiritual possession, which he uses to hack their systems in a more supernatural way. This would also explain why Burntrap is the only antagonist in the game in Security Breach to not have his own jump scare. He isn't physically there, so he obviously can't jump scare you directly.
In at 4, Bunny Suit. Now, making the suit itself isn't scary. People do that all the time, and hell, I've made a couple of costumes myself. Or at least I've helped with their creation. But the creation of the bunny suit itself, like the design of the bunny suit isn't terrifying, but the scary part is why she made it, okay? And like the implications and the reasoning behind its construction. She made the costume because William was forcing her to, and like he was taking her over, threatening her if she didn't comply, and then the suit is made to turn children into corpses. So I mean, like, it's a pretty horrifying thing to think about. Like, the original Spring Bonnie maybe wasn't made for that, and like just ended up becoming that, but I mean, Glitchtrap is very clearly sewn. It's a digital manifestation of Afton that he merely took control of and in essence made a copy of so that he would have a vessel in the game world, but it's still like an actual costume that was made with the express purpose of getting close to kids and then offing them. So yeah, it's pretty terrifying, not to mention the fact that it would make Vanessa and Afton a furry. Getting close to the end at number 3, grand larceny. Now, having all that knowledge is one thing, but stealing a load of trinkets, which he also does in this game, is fine, okay? Assuming that like we gave Gregory a pass on that at least. He still commits grand larceny in addition, which is typically stealing anything which has a combined value of 400 or more, or something that would cost over $400 to replace in a reasonable amount of time. If we ignore the 87 collectible prize boxes found throughout the game, which would easily equal over $400, he still steals Freddy at the end of the game. In basically every ending, Freddy and Gregory leave without a care in the world, including the canon one. okay? And before you say, Connor, I'm calling BS, Freddy chose to leave with Gregory. Freddy is an animatronic robot who cannot physically make that choice. He is property of Fazbear Entertainment. He is not a living being. He is an artificial intelligence. Just like ChatGPT, he has no rights. He is an object in the most literal sense of the word, which makes me think that maybe we need to start advocating for animatronic rights. But like, come on, okay? Freddy doesn't consent to Gregory climbing inside of him for the first time. And so, yeah, if you want to say that he had that choice, then you know what? Gregory violated his consent too. So either way, it works out as just Gregory being a bad person. Gregory, in theory, could be getting charged for a whole lot more than just grand larceny or stealing Freddy too. And if you tell me that you don't think replacing Freddy in a reasonable amount of time would cost less than $400, you need to leave this video, okay? He would be the most expensive one to replace. He's the star. He is the face, the name of the company. It is Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizza Place, or Pizzaplex, whatever. Speaking of which, penultimately in at number 2, resurrected Afton. The most evil thing that Vanny did from any standpoint is resurrecting Afton, okay? From an in-universe perspective, she brought back seemingly this Earth's most prolific serial killer, and then from a story perspective, it comes out of nowhere and is forced. Like in a game sense as well, he just looks terrifying. And then he also sends all the broken animatronics after us, and then lore-wise, Afton's back. Again. However, he's also not entirely back, it seems, considering how this version it appears to be finally dead, but is functional because maybe Afton's coded consciousness is inside of it, but it also has all of his fleshy bits still. He was the arm that was shown in that one trailer that every YouTuber milked for as long as they could, us absolutely included. Are you kidding me? Daily FNAF videos? This cow has been milked so dry, it is giving us sand, but we're still going, okay? But either way, you did it. And it was a bad thing to do, and it makes you a villain, and it's gonna make you the villain of the DLC. And finally, in at number 1, Burn Trap. So, during the true ending, otherwise known as the Afton ending, or the Burn Trap ending, or the whatever you want to call it ending, because it doesn't really matter, we have to fend off Burn Trap's attempts to take control over Freddy by setting him on fire with what I'm assuming are the mechanisms that Henry used in FNAF 6. However, it's pretty convenient that we fall into the room that we need to, with monitors set up to the areas that Burn Trap enters, and only those rooms, with buttons that light fires in those rooms that correspond with the monitor. Like, I'm surprised that you hit the button on the left and the right one doesn't, like, set on fire, alright? Come on. It would have been far more convenient for Henry to light everything at the same time, but I mean, like, think about it, okay? How are these working? It's clearly been a while. It's like Gregory knew that he would be fine. It's like he knew that going down the one-way elevator trip would all work out in his favor. And his first reaction, his first instinct to seeing this thing crawl out of a recharge pod is trying to destroy it instead of questioning what the f it even is, okay? Like, I think he briefly mentions it, but then he instantly forgets about it and then it's like, fire! Like, the dude is an arsonist, straight up.
Number 10. Was Vanny ever actually important? I don't know if Rune can actually make any sense of Vanny for me, but I'm still holding out hope that it can. Vanny and Vanessa were characters that I was genuinely excited for in this game. I was curious to learn if they were one and the same, what each persona's relationship with Afton was like, and how this shaped who each side of the character was. I thought Vanny might be a new antagonist, or Vanessa perhaps a new ally. Perhaps we'd get a bit of both. Instead, I got a character that barely appeared and who pretty much shared the gameplay purpose of the antagonistic animatronics, without much exploration of who the character was and what motivated her. Honestly, I feel like Roxanne Wolf got more character development than Vanny. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, why not show us by clicking that subscribe button? Number 9. Return to Classic. Isn't it interesting that they didn't decide to give Burn Trap a completely new look? I feel like this may have actually been done intentionally, not just because William was content to occupy his old, completely scrappy and burnt up body, but because the game creators wanted to hint at a return to the classic era of Five Nights at Freddy's. I think that this could be a sign that not only will we see more Burn Trap, or perhaps a less tarnished version of William Afton, but we will also see some of the classic animatronics reappear, perhaps with the next game to follow Security Breach being set earlier in the timeline. I feel like there are still so many places throughout throughout the timeline that we have yet to explore or see or visit. So I personally would be here for a game that takes us back to an earlier event or perhaps even location. Number 8, wearable swap. Is it too much to ask to have clothes that you can actually wear in this game? I didn't think so, but it seems that developers disagreed with me because all the collectibles in this game are basically unwearable. Sure, you can collect them and use them to upgrade stats and even advance missions, but we don't actually get to see our appearance change. I don't think it's a lot to ask for clothes that I can actually wear in a game. A lot of games have this. Heck, Hogwarts Legacy even has clothes you can wear and then further customize the appearance of using previously collected clothing items, even if you've sold those items. So you can not only maximize stats, but you can also maximize your fashion. There is so much cool 80s theme and Fazbear theme stuff in this game. Just let me wear my Glamrock Freddy sweater. Gosh darn it.
And it's 7 missing kids. With so many Fazbear locations having kids go missing, you'd think that they'd have gone out of business permanently. But maybe every parent feels like they have something to prove, so they risk their kids' lives so that when all is said and done, they can go home and flex on the other parents at the weekly book club meeting, saying that their kids survived a trip to Freddy Fazbear's because of them. But no matter the reason, okay, at least 9 kids have once again gone missing at this newest Fazbear location, resulting in multiple complaints, but as we see in the opening cutscene where Freddy is glitching out, still a full house. We don't exactly know what happened to these kids, however we can assume that those kids were in fact made into corpses, or maybe they're just being kept and that's who we play as in the Ruin DLC. I don't know. Maybe they were used to restore Afton to full strength, which ultimately didn't work, or maybe it was just to like power the entire Pizzaplex. I don't know, maybe they need to maybe they need like a sacrifice a month in order to like recharge the building. It could be just a really messed up Monsters Inc., like the Brothers Grimm Monsters Inc. But either way, we have at least 9 kids that have gone missing thanks to Vanny, as we see in the worst ending.
Number 6, why remove the DLC? Shortly after the game was released, a lot of content that was unused in the game but still accessible via code was cut from this game. At the same time, the DLC tab was still usable, although with some extras having been deleted, these no longer became accessible and just either didn't do anything when you clicked on them or they reset your game. What I'd like to know based on what we see in Rune, or what I'd at least like to get an idea for, is why all this unused content was completely removed. Will we see less of it in the code for Rune because developers simply didn't realize how deep into the code the game fans would go and they didn't want them to look at it for some reason? Or is it perhaps being hidden away because it's going to be properly woven into gameplay for Rune and they wanted to, you know, keep that a little secret? Or is it simply that devs wanted to parse down the game so they could focus on the remainder of what was left and better utilize it? We'll probably have to wait until people get to dive deep into the code for Rune to know.
Halfway through into number 5, security room. Now, locking us in a security room while we're trespassing and waiting for the cops is one thing, okay? But doing that, saying that you're calling the cops and then not calling them is something else. And then add on top of that, the fact that you then change into your serial killer persona and then come after me while I have to try and escape with a very clear present on the ground that had the exact screwdriver I needed is another thing. But some say we can't fault Vanessa on that because maybe she loses control and then Afton just takes over and it's not really her choice. But you know what? Actually, it is. I've said it before, but Vanessa knows that Afton is controlling her. Okay, well, like, maybe not exactly Afton, but she knows that someone else is in her head and that they don't have good intentions. She knows that she's blacking out, and as we know, thanks to the CDs, she's talking about how he could always be listening. She knows about this whole thing, yet she's still locking us in a room where her psychotic double can find and kill us easily. Like, bro, come on. Why would you think that that is a good idea? Just kick us out next time. Literally, just throw us out of the building. Who cares if you're gonna wait for the cops? It's a kid. It's not like he's gonna actually be charged, or even if he is, it's just gonna get expunged when he turns 18.
Number 4, who is the princess? The princess from Princess Quest is an interesting character. We have been speculating on the lore behind this character since we first saw her appear in the mobile port of Help Wanted. Fans have theorized about all the folks she could be meant to represent. represent. But there are also theories that she could be her own independent character. Based on the file name found in Security Breach, some believe she is Cassidy and is meant to represent a manifestation of Golden Freddy. And yet, because of Chica's appearance in Princess Quest 3, some believe that she is in fact meant to represent Susie. Chica? Susie? You know what I mean? Others still have connected her with Vanessa and Vanny due to the 16 torches she lights throughout her minigame, which could represent the 16 cassette tapes we find in Help Wanted VR. There is also the fact that Glitch Trap appears in this game along with Vanny's mask, and of course there is a shadow version of the princess who is capable of lighting purple torches. But who is she actually meant to represent? It would be nice to get a more definitive answer in the Rune DLC, although I think I'm still leaning more towards Vanny myself at this point, so I think I know, but do I know? Because there's a lot of weird stuff that's contradictory with that. Number 3. Possession. I believe that Burntrap could return in the DLC Rune in control of the blob animatronic that we see at the end of Security Breach. While the blob initially seemed to be intent on attacking Burntrap and either incidentally or intentionally saving Glamrock Freddy and Gregory, this doesn't mean that the blob won that fight. We don't know what happened next, and it is possible that in the end, Burntrap actually won this fight, managing to take control of the blob as it was attempting to do with the other animatronics. Now, just because the blob is a mangled kind of mess doesn't mean that it might not be susceptible to, being hacked and overtaken by Afton's spirit or programming, so it's possible. Number 2. Who is Gregory really? Who is he really? I don't believe you. He's no one? I don't believe you. Gregory is a character that has made me question everything I thought I knew about this franchise and the lore, because he doesn't really seem to be anyone. For those of us who were extremely passionate about the lore prior to the release of Security Breach, Gregory was a major disappointment for many of us, I gotta say. We still don't know who exactly he is, but it seems more than likely he's kinda just no one? Although I personally still think he might be an animatronic that was somehow made by William Afton and just appears to be a boy, or is perhaps an animatronic that was maybe made by somebody else. Might not be Afton there. I'm really hoping we get some kind of lore significance for the character, no matter how small it may be in the Rune DLC. Here's hoping.
And then finally, in at number 1, Princess Quest. This is a theory that I truly believe, and that I'm pretty sure has been all but confirmed, but Vanessa is certainly the princess that we play as within Princess Quest, since the game was used to lock her away in the first place, in both Help Wanted and in the version from Security Breach, which is just a recreation of the one from Help Wanted's mobile port. But there are also lore bags mentioning how Princess Quest was an arcade machine that for some reason was ported into the medium for mobile, and then just wasn't destroyed for the arcade machines and they couldn't figure out why. So this is clearly meant to be the game that was in Help Wanted, and then since we play as Vanessa in Help Wanted, it only makes sense that Vanessa is the princess that is within the game. Plus, we have to fight our way back into our body through this game, as indicated by the sword that she gets in chapters 2 and 3, and I mean we're also fighting off glitching bunnies that are chasing us this whole time.